Good Monday evening, folks. Chief Meteorologist Tim Pandajis here with you. We're tracking our third and final phase of this storm system building on through Hampton Roads in northeastern North Carolina. First phase was 24 hours ago, and we joined you talking about the wintry mix that was coming on through. Phase 2 was earlier today, and we had widespread heavy rain. Inch and a quarter fell in most locations. And now phase 3 here is the back end wraparound moisture that's falling this time around as predominantly snow area wide. It is noticeably lighter the farther south you go. And in fact, I think northeastern North Carolina, you're probably going to miss out on most of this once again here, as it's really focused on the peninsulas, interior portions of south side, and up into the eastern shore as well. We've got widespread moderate snow falling on the back side of the system. You can see the brighter or the darker shades of blue there, indicative of a little bit of some heavier snow there. A loop over the last hour. In fact, I want to go back a couple hours here because you can see just how quickly this line blossomed as it was to the west of Richmond, then just really flared up. And then it moved over Richmond. It's pretty much tracking along the 64 corridor. I wouldn't doubt if we see the southern end of this kind of flare up a little bit more within the next hour or so, but that'll likely be about it. And this will be the last of it gone probably within the next hour, excuse me, to 90 minutes or so. And now that the sun has gone down, obviously, and temperatures are going down as well, it's a little more likely that what is falling is sticking, especially on grassy, elevated surfaces. So this could easily put down a coating to a ½ inch, especially in our northern cities and counties, and then maybe a dusting or trace a little bit farther to the south. But current imagery here on radar, you know, we've got some flakes. I stepped outside our station here in downtown Norfolk earlier, and it was sleeting, and it does look like it has gone over to some very fine light snowflakes coming on down there right now. You get over into Suffolk, and we've got some pockets of some more moderate snow pretty much throughout the city there. Getting up in Isle of Wight over towards Smithfield, you're likely getting some moderate snow for you. And certainly the snow is flying as you get up into the peninsula. You see the I-64 corridor is once again coated with snow, likely. A lot of slick spots developing in the next couple of hours and overnight. And we're going to talk about a steep drop in temperatures happening later on this evening and overnight. And that's going to cause some issues because of all the rain we had today. Haven't had a chance to dry things out. We've got wet roadways, wet sidewalks, wet bridges and overpasses. And with temperatures diving well below the freezing mark, we're going to have a lot of black ice developing. By early tomorrow morning, I do expect a lot of slick spots to develop out there. Middle Peninsula, getting up to Gloucester and Matthews, widespread moderate snow for you. Achilles, Gloucester, over towards the eastern shore. You've got up and down 13 from Exmoor to Melfa to Onancock, Bloxham. You're getting another round of some snow. And these are the areas that did pick up the accumulations late last night. In fact, the highest total in our area came in Williamsburg. They got 3 inches of snow as our first band came on through yesterday. They, of course, did also transition over to rain. So all of that did melt and get washed away. So additionally, we'll see some more here. And thing is, what falls tonight won't be melting tonight. It's going to freeze solid as temperatures really take a drop. I want to visit northeastern North Carolina, Hertford County. You know, Winton, just to the north, east of Ahoskie, maybe getting some snowflakes reaching the ground for you there, headed towards Gatesville. I know the first round you didn't see much of anything out there, and you certainly got a lot of the rain, though, that came on through earlier. Downtown Norfolk, over to northern portions of Virginia Beach, getting over to Ocean View. You're seeing some snow flurries for you there right now over by the airport in Norfolk, which, by the way, did record 1/10 of an inch of snow last night. And that would be measurable snow. So it was 1,072 days since we last saw that. And that was our second longest snow drought on record. So now that drought has come to an end. We waited that long for 1/10 of an inch of snow. I've got issues with that, but, you know, we'll see. And, you know, as we get a little bit later in the stream, we're going to talk about another threat for some wintry weather, potentially, as we get into this upcoming weekend. Long-range models, we're talking the global, European, GFS split on what may happen here, but the signal is certainly there for a robust coastal low to develop. And of course, you know, being in this area, close to the water, along the coast, the exact track is paramount on what we see here. Right now, the GFS, I'm going to show you in a second, but I'll just give you a brief overview. GFS has it pretty much tracking right overhead, starting wintry mix over to rain. European is a much more colder scenario. playing on out. Which one's right? Too early. It's Monday. We're talking late Friday night, early Saturday here for our window of opportunity potentially. But it's something to keep an eye on here as we get a little bit further into the work week, right? Off to the north here, up in Saluda. I mean, it's starting to wind down now in Richmond. You see out in the west end of Richmond, it's pretty much right along the I-95 corridor. You got west of there now, things have really died down. To the east, still pretty active, and we're looking at another hour to 90 minutes before this all shuffles east and offshore, and we begin to see our winds really kick in out of the north. Let's check out some cameras. We'll go up along the peninsula and over to Williamsburg. This is the Williamsburg Art Museum. Unfortunately, this isn't a streaming camera. It's taking a snapshot every 5 seconds. But if you look down the bottom left part of your screen there, that's the street light. You can see it highlighting the snowflakes, and they are flying there. You can see roadways are still wet, but temperatures in Williamsburg are below freezing. So what is wet will be frozen in the short term and very, very slippery. So I really want you to take that seriously overnight tonight, because unlike last night, we saw temperatures warming through the overnight and eventually leading to some melting. This time around, it's going in the opposite direction. Temperatures are going to be going down, and what is wet now will be frozen and a sheet of ice if it's not properly treated within the next couple of hours or so. But we are seeing it accumulating there on the grassy surfaces over there in Williamsburg. And again, they had the highest snow total yesterday of 3 inches. Eastern Shore saw 1.5 to 2 inches in some spots as well. But really, it was up in the peninsula that saw the most. All right, here's a live look from our Skyview camera. This is a streaming camera right above our studios here in downtown Norfolk. I did step outside just a little while ago, and it was snowing very, very lightly. A lot of this probably isn't accumulating at all here, and our roadways are still wet. And temperatures in the city still hover a degree or two above the freezing mark, but it won't be like that for much longer. In fact, let's look at some temperatures across the area right now. And we've got some numbers that are in the 20s already, like Richmond, sitting at 29. 31 at Gloucester. Melfa is now down to 30. Freezing at Newport News, over to Franklin as well. You notice Norfolk at the airport. This is a little misleading. So the airport is, of course, right there along the water, and it tends to run a little bit warm. So maybe in downtown we do have some numbers that are 33, maybe right at the freezing mark. 29 also at West Point currently, 32 Wachapreague, 34 at Portsmouth, 31 at Wakefield. So notice the trend here, the cold air coming in from the northwest and slowly building on in. Now, once that band of snow pushes out of here, behind it, winds will open up and become a little bit gustier. So that will help temperatures dive a little bit quicker. And unfortunately, the winds usually help to dry things out before we freeze. That may be the case in some spots, but we've just had so much rain today and there's so much moisture around that we're going to see a lot of that freezing. And you see temperatures are already below the freezing mark in a lot of areas. So back over to radar now, just to kind of follow along here as we're tracking this final band, this final burst of snow pivoting on through Hampton Roads. The last hour here show it making some pretty good headway. Clearing the Richmond area right now. 64 corridors, once again, going to be a pretty slick interstate swath there from Richmond down to Williamsburg and over to the HRBT and Monitor Merrimack. Pretty slippery conditions out there. I know VDOT's been out there treating the roads. It's hard to do because they brined the roads this weekend, right? So Saturday they were out there brining the roads. You probably were out driving and you saw those narrow bands of white. After it dries, it looks like powder on the roadways. That's a brine mixture that helps to stop the ice from latching on to the road surface, right? So it alleviates any slick conditions. But what happens so many times in our area is that we start wintry mix and we go over to rain. So all that brining got washed away. So right now we're looking at non-treated roads for the most part. There are sand and salt trucks out there, of course, going to be treating the roads as they see fit. I even saw a few stationed last night on 264 in Virginia Beach. So they are well positioned and forward deployed pretty much where they need to be. VDOT's following along on things, obviously, and looking at road conditions. They have temperature sensors in certain areas that are a little more vulnerable to icing, and they'll treat those pretty quickly. But you got to do your due diligence and prepare for this overnight tonight into tomorrow. If you work those early morning shifts that go out before the sun comes up, you're looking at some very icy conditions. I don't see us getting above the freezing mark until we get to maybe late morning tomorrow. So what's frozen out there tomorrow morning will stay frozen. Once the sun does hit, certainly will start to melt. But we're looking at several hours of well below freezing temperatures. Gloucester, Matthews area, if you're joining us on this stream, nice to see you. And by the way, if you are watching this as well, you can find me on Twitter or on my Facebook page. I'd love to know what you're seeing where you are. And if you do post, also post a picture and your location and time so we can use that. Because a lot of times, we're not everywhere. We have, of course, radar. We can see what's going on. But this is the radar sensing what's going on just a little bit above the surface. So sometimes it's not verifying at the ground what we're seeing. We don't know what totals are everywhere unless you tell us. So we'd love for you to be our eyes in this last little burst of snow coming on through. Starting to see it get a little bit more coverage here as we get over into Gates County. Okay, that's good. You guys didn't really see much snow from this last round earlier yesterday. So getting a few flakes flying out by Gatesville. You can see that a little bit of some darker blue right there by Haroldsville, over Gatesville itself, and eventually moving towards Mittensville too. So a few flakes, maybe a dusting surmounting out of that. Out in the Suffolk, most of the city seeing some snow. Building over into the western branch now of Chesapeake. Deep Creek seeing a little bit of some light to moderate snow. Portsmouth, it's snowing. Norfolk, it's snowing. Ocean View. Not so much into Virginia Beach just yet, but it is heading in your direction. And I do bet that what we see here going on, let's draw it in this particular area here, I see this holding together and maybe even intensifying a little bit as it drops into Chesapeake and Virginia Beach. At least that's what's been shown on a lot of the modeling that's been very consistent with this. To the north, as we saw yesterday, it's a little bit more widespread and more steady snow that's coming on down along the entire 64 stretch to where it breaks off on 64 towards Richmond and north on 95. Getting some widespread snow there all the way up pretty much, Spotsylvania County getting plenty of snow. Gloucester and Matthews adding to the snow totals that they had up north, which was anywhere from like 3 to 5 inches. It wasn't a snowpocalypse type of thing, but they certainly got plowable snow. And of course, schools been canceled there as well as down here. Several schools in the peninsula, Middle Peninsula's Eastern Shore were closed yesterday. And if you've been watching on air on 13 News Now, we do have more delays already posted for tomorrow and even some closures as well. So check in with your districts and see if that winter break will be extended for yet another day until we finally clear things out and dry out a little bit. But we're not going to be done with the cold just yet. In fact, we're looking at 3 consecutive mornings that we're forecasting wind chills to drop into the single digits and teens in a lot of spots. So a big surge of some colder air coming into our area behind this last burst of snow. Radar is painting on a new scan here, so we've got updated radar imagery. You can see it really pushing on in over the Great Dismal Swamp, western portions of Chesapeake, over spreading more Norfolk now, up into Bennett's Creek, North Suffolk, downtown Suffolk, getting some widespread light to moderate snow. Smithfield for you, one of my favorite towns in Hampton Roads. Getting some light to moderate snow there just on the banks of the James River. Up towards Rushmere over into Surrey County. Much more in the way of snow. In fact, you had accumulations from last night's snow. Some of it may be lingering on grassy areas, but certainly most of it got melted away from today's rain. And up into Williamsburg, seeing some widespread light to moderate snow, as you saw from that camera in downtown Colonial Williamsburg there, seeing that too. Looks like the heaviest of the snow pushing up along 64 here as you get closer to Richmond on the east end over by the airport, getting towards Walkers, and that's going to be some heavier snowfall for you as well. So let's get into temperatures once again, see if that's changed at all with any change in wind direction, and we are still hovering near that freezing mark. In fact, now we're in the upper 20s at Melfa, 31 over at Gloucester, still 34 at Norfolk, and 32 at Franklin, 29 West Point. I have been checking in on the National Weather Service chat. A lot of times emergency managers or National Weather Service meteorologists will kind of check in and give some totals if they've gotten some snowfall reports. Not seeing anything reported just yet, so things are still relatively quiet. But rainfall today, it was coming down quite heavily. Check out some of these totals that fell since midnight. I'm a little surprised that it wasn't a little bit higher. Out in Virginia Beach today, it was pouring for hours, and officially over there at Oceana only clocked about 0.8 of an inch of rainfall. Meanwhile, up along the eastern shore, over an inch in Melfa up to Wallops Island, and most everywhere else came in between a 0.5 inch and an inch of rain. which all in all is pretty beneficial. We are under a moderate drought condition here, even though, we are in the middle of winter. It'd be a lot worse if this was the middle of summer and we'd have all the evapotranspiration going on with all the plants still around. But in the middle of winter, we don't pull as much moisture out of the ground, with it, of course, being frozen and the plant life being dormant at this point. But all that rain out there, keep in mind there's puddles. There's wet roadways still. We're just not going to really evaporate most of this, and it's going to freeze over as temperatures have already taken a dip. So that is why we have extended our weather alert day through tomorrow morning, through daybreak tomorrow morning, for the flash freeze potential that we are expecting overnight tonight. So the combination of our burst of snow that's moving through currently. We had that window of time 7 to 9, and I think that's playing out quite well. Moved in our western zones right around 7, and will play out until at least 9 o'clock through most of the area. So that falling on top of wet roadways that are in the process of freezing is going to create that flash freeze scenario as temperatures are forecast to dip into the low to mid 20s for those overnight lows tonight. So I expect more widespread slick spots than what we saw this morning. So take that into account. And as I mentioned, last night we had temperatures that were warming overnight. Tonight, they're going in the opposite direction. They'll be dropping and falling off all night. And those bitter cold wind chills are really going to be the story as we get into the next couple of mornings. Let's visit those snow totals. Again, it wasn't a widespread, significant snowfall, but a lot of these areas haven't seen snow in a long time. So Williamsburg clocked in at 3 inches. Gloucester, 1.5 inches. Wakefield, 1.1. Smithfield, 0.5. And then there's that 1/10, that measurable snow at Norfolk International, putting an end to our snow drought of 1,072 days. All right, here's a look at some futurecast here. We'll walk through time and show you that banding moving out of here offshore pretty much by 9:30, 10 o'clock. By 11 o'clock, if you're joining us on 13 News Now at 11, we're likely going to be quiet on radar. All of it's going to be pushing off to the east-northeast. Temperatures by that point in most locations will be below the freezing mark. We still have the cloud cover. But notice as we get past midnight, that cloud cover erodes, winds kicking out of the north and west, blustery. And by tomorrow morning, we've got air temperatures in the upper teens as you get closer to Richmond, lower to mid-20s pretty much everywhere else. Add in those winds, gusting to 30, 35, and look at these numbers that we could be waking up to tomorrow morning. Feeling like 5 out at West Point, 9 over at Amelpha, 8 over at Newport News, 10 degrees at Norfolk to Chesapeake, 11 down at Edenton, 12 out at Virginia Beach. And even by tomorrow afternoon, typically 2, 3 o'clock this time of the year would be our warmest point in the day. And we've got wind chill values at that point that are still in the mid-20s. So it's just going to be a bitterly cold day. At least we'll have the sunshine out there, but a very cold day. Then by Wednesday morning, right back down in some areas into the single digits, especially to the north and west. Mid to upper teens everywhere else. And then Thursday morning, winds should die down a little bit. We're not talking gusts 30 to 35 anymore. But I think this will be the morning that our air temperatures are the coldest this week. So low 20s, upper teens for air temperatures. So that means when you have that, you don't need as strong a breeze to knock the wind chills down to these single digits. So if we got an air temperature of 20, 19, you get a breeze of 10, 11, 12, and that's enough to knock it down to feeling like, 12 out at Newport News. Look at Tappahannock. I mean, they'll probably have air temperatures that'll be around 15 or so. So the wind chill will make it feel like it's a single degree potentially by Thursday at sunup. Look at Chincoteague at 2 degrees. In Norfolk and Virginia Beach to Chesapeake, feeling like 13 degrees out the door Thursday morning. So not 1, not 2, but 3 consecutive mornings in a row that we're going to be dealing with wind chill values. So keep in mind, just a lesson here on wind chill and what that actually means when we talk about it. So your body creates a layer of heat, right? When you have exposed skin, that wind will take away the layer of warmth that your body is emitting, right? So that will in turn drop your body temperature. And that thin layer of moisture and exposed skin will evaporate with the wind. The wind will evaporate that moisture away from your skin, so you're exposed, your body temperature drops, it'll cool your body, and you'll eventually end up with some frostbite if you're not properly protected. All right, let's touch briefly here, excuse me, on our potential for our next system. The time frame we're looking at here is going to be late Friday and early Saturday. So what we're doing here, because we're only in the window, the time frame window of models that we can see what's going on with our long-range global models, okay? So we've got two. Well, we've really got three, but two I can show you. We've got the GFS, Euro, and there's a Canadian model as well. And there's actually several other ones too, but in our system we have these two. So the GFS is the American model, the Euro is the European model. And what we're looking at here is there's a pretty pronounced signal from both of a coastal low developing. And this is a snapshot right around dawn, Saturday morning. So the GFS paints something. If I was to play it out, this is just a snapshot, but if I was to play it out, the GFS does show starting as a wintry mix overnight and then transitioning over to a cold rain, very similar to what we just saw, right? The European, however, on the other hand, does keep colder air involved, has a more favorable track farther south and east of the center of the system, keeping the cold air locked in, and a snowier solution. Now, I want to preface this before we get too excited. I'm team snow all the way, right? I would get excited about this, but you have to remember that these models run 4 times a day, each of them. We have 5 days before this would come. So we have 20 different model runs at most. Mostly probably like 18 model runs until we're right up on it. By the time we get to Thursday morning, late Wednesday, we will then be in the window of time that we can start using high-res models. And that's the graph model, the HRRR that we've shown you on air before too, and of course the NAM model as well, is more of a short-range, higher-res model. So we'll have more in our toolbox the closer we get. But as of right now, these are the two solutions based on the most recent model runs for late Friday and Saturday coastal low. The GFS does track the center right overhead. So we would see, again, that transition from a wintry mix to plain old rain. Any accumulations we were to see would wash away. And I don't see, at least with this run of the GFS, of it dragging down enough cold air and there being lingering moisture that we see a burst of snow like we're seeing currently. Euro, on the other hand, could throw us a couple inches of snow before it exits out to sea. We'll see what happens. A lot of time to watch this one. Right now, in the short term, though, we are still watching this final burst of some snow, which, areas along and north of 64, once again, lucking out here and seeing the majority of what's going on. Just some lingering flurries down to the south, really drying up as we push things through the last 20 minutes or so. And you can see this over the last hour. It's now cleared mostly Richmond, and the northern tier of this is certainly the more widespread, steadier snow that's crossing the bay and now will be blanketing probably the eastern shore, coating to half an inch, maybe an inch, inch and a half potentially, with it being widespread steadier there. Down to the south and to south side, getting a few flurries out there now. As I mentioned earlier, I was outside in downtown Norfolk earlier, and we did have some very light snow flurries coming on down. I mean, it was steady, but it was definitely on the lighter side, and it had transitioned from sleet over to that light snow. And you could see it extending down, now exiting Gates County, heading towards Pasquotank, Brookwomen's County. Elizabeth City, you may get a few flurries there, but just like last night, you guys are just missing out on this. This is really a northern tier favored storm. Okay, there just wasn't a lot in terms of the winter weather, at least, off to the south there, even though now you got the cold air that's finally in place in those spots. So temperature-wise, we continue to drop. We've got numbers that are at or below freezing in more and more locations every time we check here. So 31 at Gloucester, 31 Newport News, right at freezing at Franklin, and hanging on to 33 at Hampton, but upper 20s now in Williamsburg. In fact, if we go over there and check on that camera in Colonial Williamsburg, you can see, this is still image every 5 seconds, but you can see in that street lantern there that there is snow falling, and it looks to be coming down at a pretty good clip. Rooftops are coated, grassy areas are coated. Looks like it's starting to coat things on the roadways there, but they do look wet. But you saw that the temperature in Williamsburg is 29. So what is there, what does look shiny and wet on the roadways, is likely starting to freeze over. So that's going to be an issue. That's going to be the biggest threat as we head through the overnight. Widespread areas of black ice in numerous locations. Another check of our sky view here in downtown Norfolk. Not much happening at the time as radar is pretty inactive overhead with just some light precipitation for the most part in downtown at this time. Most of Portsmouth over to Norfolk seeing maybe some light snow. Let me check on here and see if anybody's chimed in on Twitter or anything like that on what they're seeing. By the way, if you are watching the stream and you are on social media, shoot me a message. I'd love to know what's happening where you are. I put a post up earlier talking about the snow and seeing if people are going to say what they're where they are and what they're seeing. It looks like I'm getting reports from Poquoson, snowing there. That looks to be it right now. So if you're watching, go ahead and chime in. Love to hear from you. I'm likely getting some verification in Ocean View that there's some moderate snow falling there. Willoughby Beach, crossing over HRBT over to Hampton, Poquoson, Menchville, Newport News, some snow for you, and certainly Williamsburg as well. This will continue to play out from west to east. Last hour, you can see it really coming to an end over into Richmond, and pushing east of I-95, and that'll be the case for the next hour, I think, until we start to really clear things out in our area. But the big story behind this is going to be the flash freeze. All the area roadways that are wet from an inch and a quarter of rain today will see it all freeze over and become a sheet of ice. You know, if we switch things over here on my router, let me try this out here. Because I am seeing some snowflakes on our Nauticus camera here. Let's see. If you look closely, you can see a few light snowflakes coming on there. That's at Nauticus over along the Elizabeth River there. Here and there, some light snowflakes. Not expecting much in the way of accumulations in these areas, though. Unfortunately for folks hoping for some snow, but just keep that in mind. The main threat as we go into the overnight hours is going to be the threat for some black ice. Rain and puddles from today's rain, inch and a quarter, even an inch and a half in some spots, and with lows dipping into the upper teens and 20s. We're going to see a lot of that become ice. So watch out on bridges and overpasses over the next couple of hours, right on through early tomorrow morning. Really, we'll see that threat there. Looking ahead, let me share with you the 7-day forecast going into this upcoming weekend. Really from tomorrow through Friday, it's just quiet and cold. Temperatures in the 30s for highs, overnight lows in the 20s. And remember I mentioned that Thursday will be the coldest morning low. We've got a low of 22 there right now. I might even lower that, I think, a little bit down to 20. It is going to be very cold, and with winds that'll be lighter, it will help not only the air temperature to come down lower, but any little breeze that kicks up, you'll have even lower wind chill values. So that'll be the problem then. And then we start to, I mean, I don't want to say warm up because 39 is still pretty cold for an afternoon high. But by Saturday, with that incoming next storm threat, dependent on its track, we'll either see those temperatures go up for daytime highs if the track comes overhead or to our north and northwest. We'd be on the warm side of things in that case, and we would probably see highs around 50. However, if it tracks to the south and east, we may see that number go lower and see a more favorable track for some snow here in Hampton Roads. Let's just go back over to radar and stay on that for a bit as we watch the rain or the snow kind of depart the area from west to east, our last burst of it. Bigger picture does show this system kind of wrapping up. And what's causing this wraparound moisture here is, let's go back several hours. Let's go back the last 24 hours here and show the kind of evolution of this. So let's stop it here. Go to, let's say here. So at this point in time, which is this morning, we've got the surface low here, right? And then we've got the parent upper level low that's hanging back to the west. So as we move farther in time, we go through today and we jump ahead to now, our surface low is long gone, and as you know, it's like off the coast of Cape Cod. Meanwhile, the upper level low is hanging way back, and that's providing the lift and the energy for this back end moisture, this back end burst of snow to really take hold. And you know what's amazing about this is that the modeling was really good at hinting at this being a possibility, and it's playing out pretty much exactly as modeling, short res modeling was showing. Really favoring central and eastern Virginia, just scraping along the state line into our northeastern North Carolina areas. But yeah, the potential was there, and there will probably be some verified accumulations of 1 to 2 inches from this burst that's coming on through, especially Maryland, eastern shore over to Delaware, and even the eastern shore of Virginia as well seeing this. But as that pulls out off to the east, then we're going to be left with a turnaround flow that's going to be coming down here out of the north, and that's going to be driving in some much colder air. Wind gusts 30 to 35 later tonight. Sky clearing out and temperatures just dropping like a rock. So that's what we're going to be setting up for after this pulls out of here. Radar still, just showing some light to moderate snow shower activity, much lighter the farther south you go. We'll be looking at this kind of departing the area over the next hour or so. You can see an hour loop here shows it covering a good amount of area, clearing Richmond. Next 20 minutes, 30 minutes clearing Williamsburg as well. And Eastern Shore will probably be dealing with this the longest as we go through the next couple of hours before the 11 o'clock show tonight. So that's what we're looking at. Let me check on some observations here and see if we're getting any sort of ground reports of any additional accumulation. I'm not seeing anything just yet, but that may change here. We'll let's pull radar up full, and we'll leave that up here for a little bit, and I'll kind of chime in as I see fit to talk about some other things going on. But this is basically last couple hours of our wintry weather threat here before our black ice situation develops as we go through the overnight. Another look over Williamsburg camera. Still got snow flying there, but still not touching, accumulating on the roads there, which is interesting with temperatures below the freezing mark in that particular area. Live look here in downtown Norfolk, Nauticus. You can see a few wet snowflakes every now and then there. Temperatures there also beginning to fall. And temperatures here everywhere else still hanging on above freezing, well, closer to the coast. 28 now, Melfa, 30 Gloucester, 32 over at Franklin, 29 Williamsburg, at freezing at Portsmouth, but 35 still out at Virginia Beach. So radar here will have another hour or so of some light to moderate snow, pretty much from Norfolk points north. It's looking like very light flurries south of there, very similar to what we experienced last night. And you can see the hour loop here. Not a whole lot going on south of 64 anymore. The southern tier of that really kind of dried up and broke apart as it moved from I-95 points east of there. So we'll deal with it for about another hour or so. But the big story again overnight is going to be the possibility, or not the expected, black ice threat with everything freezing from today. The rain that we had, wet roadways, wet sidewalks, things like that. Numerous schools already delayed, even canceled for tomorrow with slippery conditions expected later tonight and into tomorrow as air temperatures drop into the low 20s with wind chills into the single digits by tomorrow morning. We'll be up again here on 13 News Now at 11. That's the latest on our stream here. We'll continue to stream radar up on our 13 News Now Plus app and on our website, but we'll join you again at 11 on the TV side.